because I believe the Lord will take us from there into what is to come and give us a deeper revelation. So let's start with Al for a moment here. Can we just give it up for Al? First, I want to say something to you. I want to thank you. From my generation, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for showing us who God is. Amen. For your faithfulness, for your steadfastness. And Lord, we thank you. We thank you because you're so good. I thank you for Al and Carolyn, for their family. I thank you for your goodness and faithfulness over their lives. Lord, and we want to just glean from who you have been, who you are, and who you will always be.
Thank you. Okay. Can you see me now? Okay. Yeah, the goodness of God. Where do you begin? Well, how about from the very beginning? I get up early in the morning and I spend some time just listening and connecting with the Lord. And then my next job that I have that I do every day is I connect with Ukraine and with Russia as well, and because our hearts are for both those countries. But I go through a whole list of situations that have taken place the day before, and out of it, I put out a prayer letter that goes out to quite a few people around the world to pray for Ukraine, and every day I get amazing stories, just of really hardships right now. Just is one of the hardest winters they've ever faced right now in Ukraine, and well below zero weather, and yet every week their infrastructures are being bombed, and so electricity's out. So they get some of them, if they're lucky, they get a few hours of electricity to turn on their heating, but a lot of them for the last while haven't even had that. Kiev, I think almost 80% of the city's been out of electricity, and some of these high-rise apartments don't have any. So it's like ice boxes, that they're living in. But anyway, there for the grace of God, I would be there. I come from Ukrainian parents that escaped and traveled, and I just actually in reverse traveled their journey through Central Asia. Just a few months ago, I went through Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, and actually started out in the city I was born in China. So kind of relived it in a very different way now, but just in my mind went through all the different things that they went through, having to escape from the Soviet Union into China over the mountains, and then from there we traveled 3 years across China right just before Mao Zedong following us. And we got to Shanghai, and he circled the city. Actually, before we got to Shanghai, we were stranded in a city in the middle of China. And it was famine. The war had just ended. The country was a mess. And we're there stranded, very little food. And there's 300 of us. My grandfather was their pastor, their leader, who had led this whole group across. And so we're there in the city of China, and there's a group of American missionaries there. And one of them takes a walk one day, and he's walking down the street, and he hears this music, and he recognizes it. It's an old hymn, but he doesn't recognize the language. So he follows the music, comes into this building, and here's these several hundred people singing this hymn. And he says, "Who are you? And what in the world are you doing here in the middle of China?" And they explained they're Ukrainians that had fled and ended up here in the middle of China. And anyway, he was, of course, very touched by their story. And shortly afterwards, these American missionaries were forced out of the country, went back to America. And this man, whose name was Scratch, and if you know anything, he was Darlene's uncle. He found us there in the middle of China. And he came back to America and began to petition for us and got churches praying and helping us and got the United Nations behind us. So when we arrived in Shanghai, Shanghai was surrounded, about to be taken, and Mao Zedong and Stalin had made an agreement that all the Slavs were to be sent back to the Soviet Union. So after all these years of travel and difficulties, they're looking to this fate of being sent back again to the Soviet Union. You can imagine that. But it was right at that time that because of the prayers and petitions of these people and Darlene's uncle, that we were taken out of Shanghai by the United Nations and taken to the Philippines. And so we lived there for a couple of years in a refugee camp. And so I'm just telling you that whole story, just you talk about the goodness of God, just having to look back at that and compared to where we would be today if we were there in Ukraine, and that's why my heart goes out to them, and we do everything we can for them. But I grew up in a Slavic community in San Francisco, and it was a very conservative group of people that, if you put all the Amish and radical Pentecostals all together, you'd come close to what they were like, we grew up not being able to do anything, it's just dancing was just, that was way on the far end of the scope. But we couldn't play baseball. We couldn't do anything. And so growing up with that, we just, just began to get enculturated by American culture and started to feel our wings. And one day we decided to go to a movie. Yeah, that's right. and we went and we came out and we thought, wow, we're still alive. Nothing happened, and then thought, wow, let's go to another movie. And so that began our downward spiral as we began to try all the other things. And unfortunately, it really was a downward spiral. And my friends and I, all of us grew up together in the Philippines and came together on a ship to San Francisco. But here all of us ended up in jail together. And so that was the downward spiral. But my parents were let out of that situation that they were in Ukraine by following the voice of God. And they knew the voice of God. They followed it explicitly, and he led them. Leave tonight. And they left tonight, and the next day a battle broke out. And that's what it was like. But I grew up on those stories of hearing the voice of God. But that night in jail, I heard the voice of God speak to me. And he said, Al, is this what you want of your life? Is this where you want to end up? And I cried out to the Lord. I said, no, Lord, no. I don't want to be here. I don't want this for my life. I said, help me. And I will seek to follow you with all my heart. And I did. He helped me, and I did. And, it was shortly after that I met Lauren Cunningham, and he came to our city and recruited a bunch of us. That was 1964 to the Bahama Islands. And I went on that outreach, and it changed my life. And it was there that I began to really learn for myself to hear the voice of God. And it started an adventure that, that was incredible. I mean, I could be here from now until midnight telling you story after story after story, miracle after miracle, and how he led and guided. And my dream was to go back to Ukraine, go back to Russia, to those countries. And he did it in a time when it was impossible, but I was able to make my first trip to the Soviet Union and then continue a whole life of ministry in that part of the world, and in some of the most difficult circumstances and impossibilities, and yet the miracles that took place. The goodness of God is, how do you even begin to tell? Oh boy, just one. Yeah, well, by the way, I've just started people bug me about a book, and I started writing a book years and years ago, and that book is now many, many books, but I've never been able to finish them because it's the story's not finished, and it's been hard, and so recently I've started a podcast of telling these stories, and so if you're interested, you can go to Al Akamoff. This is my story in what do you call it? YouTube, and find these stories. But so I just put a couple of them up just recently, but I'm going to be doing it weekly now, and hopefully that's going to be turned into a book. And so anyway, but okay, so one story. So this will give you a little history of YWAM too, but. So I'm through a real series of miracles that included Corrie ten Boom opening the way for me to work with Brother Andrew. So I'm invited to work with his team. We joined his team for several years, lived with him there in his home, actually, in Holland. So you talk about discipleship into Eastern Europe. I mean, that was real discipleship. We actually lived with Corrie ten Boom as well. But anyway, that's another story. But so we're working with Brother Andrew, and a man calls. He owned a business in Northern Holland. He said, I am going through a process of having to clean out my store to bring in spring clothing, but I've got this beautiful winter clothing that I just don't know what to do with. I just can't get rid of it, but I thought, maybe people in Eastern Europe can use it. What do you think? Could you use it? And so they sent Carolyn and I up there, and we drove up and picked up a couple of suitcases of beautiful winter clothing. Well, we were just about to make a trip to Czechoslovakia, a Bible smuggling trip. And so we called our good friends, Joe and Judy Portali, who were in Kona, now in Kona, but at that time they were in Lausanne, and said, you guys want to join us on a smuggling trip? They said, okay. So they joined us, and we met them in Germany and drove across the border Christmas Eve. So we're driving through Czechoslovakia, going to the part called Moravia, and got to this pastor's home late at night. It was Christmas Eve, and we arrived at their home, and they're celebrating Christmas Eve, but they're excited to see us. And they says, oh, I can't believe you came just now. And so they were in the process of celebrating what they called Love Feast. And it was a time when they took this big wafer that they have there in Czechoslovakia, and they passed it around to each other and told each other how much they loved each other. And so we joined together in this love feast. And it was that, by the way, that when the Portalis returned to Lausanne, took this story with them, And that became, or that's where we got our word love feast for YWAM, in YWAM. The love feast, at least the name of it, came from that night in Czechoslovakia. But he was so excited, not just with the Bibles that we brought, but he was so excited about the clothing. We couldn't understand why, but he said, tomorrow a person is leaving for the Soviet Union. And he says, we've got to get over to him right away. So we unloaded some of the Bibles and the clothing, and he went and delivered it. We continued on that journey. It was a fantastic, fantastic trip that I can't tell you all about. But it was years later that Carolyn and I and our girls were in Czechoslovakia again. And by this time, the son of that pastor was pastoring in Prague. And so I called him, and he said, oh, I can't believe you're here. Get over here as quick as you can. And so we got over to his house. He said, there's someone I want you to meet. And so we went into their living room, and there was a family, a young family. And he introduced us, and she said, yeah, I'm the sister of Joseph Bondarenko. Well, immediately I was kind of shocked, because Joseph Bondarenko probably was one of the most famous Christians in all of the Soviet Union. He was the Billy Graham of the Soviet Union, and was at that time known as the most wanted man. They had posters of him. He'd spent a good part of his life in prison. And she says, I'm the sister of Joseph. And we were in our home, and it was close to Christmas, and they came and they arrested Joseph. And they took him away, but this time they were so angry that they didn't just take Joseph, they took everything. They took our furniture, they took our clothes, they took everything. They wanted to really make a statement. And so they left us totally destitute. And the next day after, a man arrives from Czechoslovakia, and he has some suitcases, the most wonderful winter clothing. He says, you can't imagine what that was like for us. And she jumped out of her chair and she began to hug us and hug us. And it was a little bit later that I met Joseph just after he got out of prison, which was another whole story and a miracle. But he just when he saw us, he fell on his knees and just grabbed us by the feet. And for us, that's quite a thing, just to have to go that low. But he did. And just weeping, thank you for what you did for our family. But these are the kind of miracles. And this again is the testimony of the goodness of God.
Okay, what are you hearing? I always have a notepad, because when I listen to these stories, I'm not taking, oh, that was nice, I want to tell that story. What are you hearing about who God is? Faithfulness? Generous God.
He's got a plan ahead of time.
He's got a plan ahead of time.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing?
Precise.
He's precise. Woo. Intentional, personal. He cares. He gives his best, provider.
He uses other people, unbeknownst to them, to accomplish a miracle for someone else. So saying yes to God when we don't know why we're saying yes is going to influence and impact someone else.
It has a ripple effect.
It's the water.
It's the water drop from the intercession. That's right.
Simple obedience changes history.
Oof. Are we taking notes? Are you taking mental notes or physical notes? Like, this is what God is doing. This DNA is not just where some people teaching up front. The Holy Spirit speaks to us through these things, and he wants to highlight today to you what you need to hear, because he hasn't changed. And I want to ask Christine to come up. Christine and David have been amazing mentors in my life, my husband's life, and Christine to me is a hero of the faith. Yeah, she probably doesn't think that herself, but to me she is. And I've seen the Lord in their lives in such amazing ways, in the way her heart, her love for the Lord, and I know that the Lord has carried her through so many years. And I just want to thank you, Christine, for being an example to so many of us, not just me and my husband, but to families around the world, to young people around the world, and we love you.
First of all, thank you so much for all your prayers for me. It's wonderful to be here. Unfortunately, David is down and he's worse today than he was yesterday. So keep up the prayers for him. But I'm very grateful for your prayers. Thank you. And for Jesus getting me through this virus. Wow, this is a hard one. Trying to think of one story to tell. We've been in YWAM for 48 years, and lots of stories. But as I was sitting there reflecting and just asking Jesus which one, I felt like I was supposed to share one of our first stories in Chile, then when we were pioneering YWAM in Chile. We were newlyweds. We were 22 years old, and it was our first school. And in our first school, we had first ETS. We had a focus on, well, we had love feasts every Friday night, and so we didn't have a lot of money because at that point, our Chilean missionaries, those who were wanting to be missionaries, or all of our Latin American missionaries, were not supported in any way, because a missionary was always someone who came, not someone who went from them. So being sent from them. So we had to disciple the church as how to give tithe money to the pastors as well as to tithe people to missions. And so we were very desperate financially always, but God was always faithful. But we went through one period about 3 weeks before the outreach. In the lecture phase, we went through a period where we didn't have any money. Our money completely dried up. And we didn't have money for food. We didn't have money for rent. We didn't have any money to buy any bus tickets for the outreach coming up. And we got on our hands and knees before God and just cried out to God as a staff and said, God, what do we do? And God said, well, you're just going to have to fast. You're going to have to fast during this time, this season, every meal until you have food. So So we explained to the staff, we explained to the students, to say, you know what, we don't have any money for breakfast tomorrow morning, but God is faithful, and God is going to come through, and we're going to spend tomorrow morning, we're going to spend time worshiping him, and we're just going to thank him. We're going to thank him for what he has given us, for who he is, and worship him because he is worthy. Just because he's worthy, and he loves us and he cares for us. So we're getting up, and we're at least one thing that we did have is we had this huge 50-pound bag of loose leaf tea, black tea. We didn't have any sugar. We didn't have any milk, but we had tea. So we were able to get up in the morning and start fixing tea for our prayer time. Well, in the midst of that, while we're preparing, all of a sudden there's a knock on the gate. And we go to answer it. And here's this woman, this wonderful sister in the Lord from some church somewhere with a whole basket full of bread, fresh bread for breakfast. And we went, what are you doing here? Said, oh, the Lord told me to get up and bring you this bread. And we said, wow, thank you. We didn't even know anybody knew us. I mean, we're new in the country and we didn't know anybody knew we were there. But God had spoke to this woman. She obeyed. She got this fresh bread and brought it to us. And so we were able to, with our tea, she brought sugar as well. We were able to have some sugar in our black tea and a piece of bread each for breakfast. And so we, of course, we profusely thanked her. And, it takes you kind of plan out in the schedule a half hour for breakfast, between eating and cleanup. Well, it only took 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes to inhale the bread and the tea. But we spent the rest of that time thanking and worshiping God. Well, that took care of breakfast. We didn't have anything for lunch. So we had class and all of that stuff. About a half hour before the scheduled time for lunch, somebody knocked on the gate again, and we went out. It was another woman, and she had these bags of food, and she brought our lunch. And we're going, where'd you come from? She came from another church, another part of the city. And we said, well, how did you know we were here? Oh, God told me to prepare lunch for you and bring it today. And again, we just went, wow. God knows we're here. That's very interesting. So again, it was a small lunch. I mean, there was small portions, but we were so grateful. Again, we didn't have any cleanup, so we spent the hour that we scheduled for lunch. We spent, 10 minutes eating our lunch and praising God, and then the rest of the time we spent in worship and thanksgiving because we didn't have anything for dinner. But we worshiped God. About 15 minutes before dinner was scheduled, there was a knock on the gate. And a third woman came in a taxi with some bread and some other things for our dinner. And she said, again, same story. God told me to bring this to you. We went 3 weeks, but my dear friends, we went 3 weeks from meal to meal to meal like this. It was incredible. I mean, it was the most remarkable thing I've ever experienced in all of my missions career. And God, never two people arrived at the same time from different places. It was never the same person. One woman came from another city that was an hour away, and never from the same church. It was just God. 3 meals a day for 3 weeks. We lived like this. At the end of that time, we still didn't have any money for outreach. We still didn't have any money but we ate, during that time, I learned so much from my Latin brothers and sisters because there was such a deep spirit of gratitude. It was gratitude and thankfulness, and there was never a voice of complaining. There was never a hint of complaining or murmuring or dissatisfaction or grumbling about the kind of food that arrived. Everything was nothing but gratitude to the Lord. And I learned so much from that. That has served me for all my missions career, that we just, whatever God provides and that we don't have, we do not grumble and we don't complain. That was such a huge lesson. But the ending of the story is finally around week 3, like the next week, we're supposed to go off on outreach, right? We're supposed to buy tickets and pay for all of our bills and everything from the lecture phase. And so we're praying, and the 3 of us are praying together and just thanking God for his provision every day, 3 times a day, and all the people that have blessed us. And God says, I want you to take up an offering. And we're going, what, God? And he says, I want you to take up an offering and give out of your need. That was a key phrase for us, to give out of our own need. So we said, okay, we don't know if anybody has any money, but we're going to go ahead and take up an offering out of obedience. So we go to the students, we say, okay, what we're going to do is we're just going to take the rest of the morning and we're just going to go through go through your backpacks, go through your pockets, go through underneath your beds, your dirty laundry, whatever. Go through everything and bring every single cent that you have, that you possess right now. And we're going to give that to the Lord. And so everybody scattered, looked for everything. And at the end of about an hour later, we came back and we presented what we had before the Lord. And we said, okay, Lord, what do we do with this now? And there was a base, a small base on the coast of Chile that with a small team, and they were struggling financially as well. And so God said, take whatever coins that you have. And it turned out to be about, I don't get the numbers exact. David gets the numbers exact, okay? David tells a story, he knows the exact number, but it was like, it was equivalent about $43.10, okay? It wasn't much, okay? But that's how much we came up with. It was about the equivalent, about $42.10. So Ricardo, our leader from Argentina, took that money and he said, okay, we're going to offer this to the team. We're going to give it away. And he hitchhiked, so he wouldn't spend any of the money. He hitchhiked out to the coast, to the base, and he walked into the base, and everybody was surprised. They said, oh, what are you doing here? And he says, well, we've been praying for you guys, and so we thought I'd come and just check on you guys, see how you're doing. Do you have any bills that you need to pay? You go, oh, we've got the gas bill that we haven't been able to pay for 2 months. They haven't turned off the gas, but we're 2 months overdue on our gas bill, and here's our electric bill as well that we have not been able to pay. He said, you guys don't have any money? And they had been eating fish for the last 4 weeks, and they had an Argentine kind of a chef guy, and he was doing fish in every conceivable, lots of creativity. And in fact, it was fish dessert. I don't know how that worked, but they were, up to here with fish, but very grateful for the fish. Again, they were going through their own testing. And so finally, so he said, okay, bring me the bills. And so they brought the bills to him and it added up to $42.15. And we had, and the 15 cents, the 10 cents, by that time their cents it doesn't mean anything. So it's basically $42. And he was able to give the offering and said, here, you can pay your bills. The next day when he so he came back to the campus, to our base in Santiago. And the next day, this woman comes to the gate again. And she didn't bring any food, but she came and she said she came from a church up in the better part of town, and she said, I have been saving for 3 years for a car, and the Lord has told me, he told me 3 times to bring this to you over the last 3 weeks. He told me to empty the bank account and bring it to you. And I didn't want to do it. And the last time he spoke to me, which was yesterday, he said, either you do it now or you lose my blessing. You will be in disobedience. And she, out of the fear of the Lord, she actually said, okay, God, I surrender this. I will give the money for my car. And she brought the whole thing. And the whole thing was enough to pay off our bills, to buy all the tickets for outreach, not coming back, but going to outreach, and enough to buy enough food for a little bit of for a love feast that night. We bought some meat, which was wonderful, for a love feast. And it showed all of us that God, when we go through times of need, of lack, God is still there. He still sees us. And there's some lessons we need to learn. But the bottom line is, he is trustworthy. It's not about us. It's not about our faith. It's about his trustworthiness, his faithfulness, as well as just that personal, he sees us. He knows us. He knows our needs, and we can trust him.
Wow, isn't that so powerful? This is our DNA, right? That's amazing. That's real impartation. So what are some of the principles we have been hearing? Obedience and giving. The fear of the Lord and giving, right? Yeah, what are some lots of giving principles here? So sometimes we have a general principle of generosity or giving. But what are all the different generosity and giving principles we have been hearing? Worship defeats poverty. I love that phrase, that we thank him for what he has given and who he is. And it started with a bag of tea. Yeah. What are other generosity principles? When we give, we don't have any reserving, right? We give all we have. Action from people. From what kind of people specifically in these stories? Strangers, the body of Christ. Can anyone say women? Okay, you're all giggling, but there is a piece there, right? Why not women? There is a very real sense that we actually need to listen to how the Lord has provided, and he is giving us pieces of DNA throughout that. How about the principle of her learning to appreciate and deeply, deeply love the people of the land, right? Because of their immense generosity. Those of you that know the Hamiltons know the incredible generous lifestyle that they live. And so this is a gift from the nations, from God through the nations, specifically women, towards them, that then they carried and taught all of us. Becomes a piece of our DNA. Okay, what else? What other principles did we hear in Christine's story? Don't complain. Wow. Ooh. There was someone else that spoke up, and gratitude. Yes. What else did you hear? Let's dig a little bit deeper. Giving out of need. Worship. Trust to whom, Marcy? Yes, trust the Lord of his promises. Sometimes, yes, the provision is in the field. It's withheld until you actually reach the place of your obedience. What are other principles even beyond generosity that we heard in her story? Either you do it or you will lose my blessing. Yes, that's so right. Yeah, alignment. When we're talking about alignment, we're talking about a piece of, it's a somber word. It is not without consequence. We have a choice as to whether we align or not, but that choice has consequences. Anything else that you heard out of her story? Yes, the Lord tests is not just on individuals, but on us as a community. God is present in our lack. Yes, His presence is not conditional on whether we experience His provision in that moment. But Danny, if you share, you got to come up. Okay, so he's going to share a little bit into what it looks like to have testing as a community, not just as individual. Which, let me phrase this. It's a really important principle for us to understand in a hyper-individualistic worldview and in a very autonomous land that we're in. So we really have to understand that we're actually more than just us as individuals.
Yeah, I mean, we see in the Bible that God cares for individuals and He cares for nations. He cares for cities. He weeps over Lazarus. He weeps over Jerusalem. And so I think God looks at not just us as individual entities, but when we're serving the Lord together, I think there's something about the unity and corporate obedience that the Lord brings a blessing to. And I think that's the beauty of being in real covenant community together. And I'm not talking about covenant in a weird way, just more like everything I have is yours, everything that we have is each other's, and really doing serious life together. And I've never been part of a community that's not been tested by God as a community. I just think that it's the same way God tests us as individuals. He tests us in our communities, and it exposes a lot more. Because me as an individual, maybe I can hide my selfishness from someone else. When I'm being tested by God as an individual, you might not know, I guess is the easier way to say, you might not know what I'm being tested on as an individual. But when we're being tested as a community, it's really hard to hide it. And I feel like even on the principle of finances and generosity, I found it interesting that in Christine's testimonies, I think about a lot of the ones that I lived and experienced as well in my childhood, growing up in a lot of the similar environments is what Christine was sharing about, of course. Lauren used to say in every group that God brings together, there's the ability to provide for everyone's needs if we're all thinking with generosity and hearing God. And I think sometimes in an individualistic environment, and I've seen this in YWAM bases in the US, we might have families among us. There's disproportion. It's what Paul writes in Thessalonians. Some of you guys I think it's Thessalonians. Some of you guys are feasting, and then some of you guys have nothing to eat. And I think that we can go through things still as individuals like that. And the Lord would actually have us be listening and paying attention to each other as community. I found it interesting that the offering was everybody gets whatever you have. It wasn't just like, a couple of people have all the money and they're going to give the offering and everyone else will withhold, or the Westerners are going to give the offering and the Chileans and Argentines are going to hold back, or vice versa. It was everyone together and having to give everything together. And so, I feel like the principle behind it is really like the same way God might shake us as an individual to expose things. He wants to test our mettle as a community. And I feel like even that might be something that the Lord's been doing here, is testing the grit and determination of this ACT as a community. Will you guys hold fast? Will you hold through it? So I don't really know that I have a whole lot more to add on that, but yeah. So good.
So two others, and then we'll have our last testimony before break. Did you notice in her story that this was all happening while they had students? Okay, I think so often we do our life for our students, but not with our students. So the stories of God become our stories that then we somehow try to transfer through teaching, but it is actually not their stories that they encountered. We try to set everything up so it's ready for them when they come, and that is a part of our hospitality and the due diligence. So I'm not speaking against that, but there is another level, especially as we're exploring pioneering stories. So any one of you that's in a season of repioneering, we should not take that lightly. What we're actually saying, right, is that we include them in the need and in the testimony of God throughout it. Christine, you're moving. Yeah.
Can I just add that 80% of those students,
80% of those students from that school stayed on, and they became the leaders of our expansion. They went on to lead other bases, pioneer other bases and other schools.
So the question then for us sometimes is, who gets to define when we're at the end of our rope, right? Because they operated many, many, many weeks in circumstances that we would say, well, it's just not working, you know. But that very thing, the students encounter the power of God, and what do they follow? They follow God. And so they follow him in the hardest places because they have encountered him in the hardest places. That is how life with God is done. But when they encounter him in easy places, it's very easy to follow him in easy places. And so we need to think that through a little bit. Okay, so Errol, come on up. So he, legend amongst us. I don't know you that well. Looking forward to reading your book, but share with us a little bit about how you encountered the goodness of God.
Thank you. Wow. I've been so blessed being here. When we saw the DNA come into our email, just felt to come. And it's been such a blessing to be able to share with, the ones that I was able to connect with here since we're here. Hear these stories, be encouraged in the DNA of our mission. And I did write a book. And around 2014 or 15, I felt I just wanted to share what I witnessed personally that the Lord has done in Greenland. Incredible. So now that you're interested in the book, there's about 4 or 5 back there, and I have a few more in my vehicle. Anyway, so I'll start with November 26, 1982. I was in the YWAM Edmonton, Alberta office early in the morning, and I was having a prayer time. And just before coming to that base, we were with YWAM Hong Kong for about a year. And before we were at that base in Hong Kong, I was, believe it or not, pastoring a little country church in my 20s. I still can't believe that those people kept me for 5 years. And a few years ago, my wife and I went back to visit that little country church. And there's one man at the back. There's a few people in the church. And there's a man at the back, and went back and, just introduced myself. Oh, Ross Taylor. And of course I knew him, he knew me. And he was talking, we were visiting. And then at the end, or towards the end of our chat, I said, I was so young back then. I don't know how you guys kept me. And he said, you helped me back then. Just like that. And God uses young people. I mean, here I am in my 20s, not experienced, although I'd been with YWAM in 72 to the Munich Olympic Games, and then, other things. And so, but God uses young people because it's God's work, and he works in and through us. And even at this age, I don't know if I feel any more qualified at this 73 years old than I did when I was 23. But that's what these stories are for, or to encourage us that it's the Lord. So coming back to November 26, 1982, we had been with YWAM Hong Kong. Now we were going into another phase. The Lord led us out of there and into another phase. So I was on my knees, or I think I was on my knees. And Lord, what country do you want me to pray for today? And Greenland popped up in my mind. So I went over to the world map and, wow, are there even any people there? And nobody's asking that question these days, right? It's in the news every day. So anyway, I guess there must be. The Lord wouldn't ask me to pray for rocks and snow. So I just prayed in faith as I felt led that morning. And it just stuck with me. And so about a year and a half later, my wife, she heard me talking about this and stuff and encouraged me I was thinking about making a trailblazing trip. And I just presumed someone would come with me. But on this particular trailblazing trip, I ended up going all by myself. And I had no contacts and no cell phone, no credit cards, And so but I did have something, a word from the Lord. And so just before I left on that trip, I was working with a small group in our DTS that I was helping with. And I asked my small group here, will you pray with me and listen to the Lord if he has a word for me before I go? And then I was going to go to Greenland, and the DTS was going to go to LA to the witness at the Olympic Games. So I went up there all by myself, and the team went over here. Anyway, so they gave me different words. And one young man, 18 years old, looked at me and said, I got the name Sven. So I go up there, I go into the capital city, Nuuk, just below the Arctic Circle. And like I said, had no contacts. And I had enough money for 3 nights in the hotel, but I had planned to be there for 3 weeks. So I went praying all over the city, just walking through the streets, praying silently for everybody I saw. It's very rocky and, hilly. So I'd go up in the little hills and pray over the town. And I was looking for a man of peace. We do that, right? Luke chapter 10, I think. Looking for a man of peace. So I noticed one building, a blue building, and there was a cross on it. So I went knock on the door. Just nobody there. Tried some other places, didn't really work out. So I was on my last day, and I'd been worshiping, I had my guitar with me. And I felt today, I even put a tie on. I'm ready. So I went back to that house and knocked on the door, and then I saw some people walk by the window, They thought I'm going to go around to the back, and I knocked on the door. They let me in, and it was like I had discovered a cavern of riches, like they invited me in, and I guess they gave me tea and coffee and stuff, and then they said after a visit, how'd you like to, you can stay in the room here for a night. And like I said, I was running out of money. So that was a provision right there. And then I asked them, I heard that there's a mission up in Sissimute, which is just above the Arctic Circle. And I'm wondering about going up there. And do you happen to know the people or have a phone number? And they did. So I called, yes, come on up. They don't get many visitors. And so I got on the ship, and it's about 24 hours or so up there. And by the way, Sharon knows all what I'm talking about. She was in Greenland, and my wife knows all about it. I don't know where she is right now. Oh yeah, stand up, Joyce. She's endured a lot. She needs a lot of claps. Anyway. More because of me, not the not the missionary work. Anyway, so I get up there, Assistant Mute, and they have a mission house. They call it a mission house, and it was built by Swedish missionaries. In fact, the elderly, well, he's elderly now. When I got up there, they had been in South Greenland, and there was some army barracks, and he took those army barracks apart, or one or two, I don't know how many, and numbered all the pieces and put them on the ship and sent them up there and put it back together again and built this mission house. Anyway, so I was there visiting with them. We're visiting, and the wife, Gunvor, she said, we were just talking, she said, yeah, my son is in Sweden right now, purchasing a mission boat, and he's going to bring it all the way back from Sweden to Greenland up here, and he wants to take teams out. And what's his name? Sven. So Sven turned out to be our man of peace. And he took our teams for 10 years. He knew Greenlandic fluently. It's one of the hardest languages of the world. It's a polysynthetic language. So you have a stem word and all the little pieces, and he spoke it fluently right off the bat. You know, he was our translator. He was our boat captain because he grew up with the boats with his father up and down the rugged coast. And they had the big mission house where we had 5 full DTSs there at the time. And then, what a story, eh? And the story just goes on and on from there. In this book I wrote, I felt I should write a book in 2014-15 to share what the Lord has done up there. And I think it's as much for my benefit as anybody else, because just reviewing what the Lord has done, sometimes you forget because you're on with what you're doing right now. Just recalling that, and I put it all together there, and man, time after time after time, I could just stand up here for a long time telling, truly the faithfulness and provision of the Lord. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Blessings.
Thank you, Errol. So kind of similar how we've done with the last 2 stories. What are some principles that have stood out to you guys? What? We're a tie. Oh, tired. Sharon? Yes, praying before involving others in the process before. That's good.
Find your person of peace.
Find your person of peace.
On that note, just this gentleman, Sven, the Lord has, it sounds like this guy just lived for an audience of one. No one here has ever heard of Sven. But, just, what a blessing that the Lord has people to have his word carry on that could care less about reputation, could care less about being known. They just want to serve Jesus. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's so good. So good.
Intercession for the nations, and the story started.
Intercession for the nations.
Remembering what the Lord has done.
Remembering what the Lord has done. Yeah, I was thinking about how encouraging and challenging it is to hear the stories of each other, like what God's done, and how it really highlights who God is. And I was thinking about how what we're living right now, each one of us someday will be a story we're telling people later. And I was just thinking about how am I trusting God right now? Where do I need to step out in faith? Where have I been held back in fear? And so I just wanted to I'm going to give moment of silence for you to think about that, like your situation right now. Where do you feel like, man, this is where I could step out in faith and in trusting God more? Yeah, for me, something, it's a little silly, but it's big for me. I don't love public speaking. And like I joined this new leadership role, and even Samuel was like, oh, you're going to get lots more time up front. And even like today, just facilitating some of this, I was like super nervous before. And I felt like I was really stuck in like, God, like calm these nerves, calm these nerves. And this morning when I woke up, I was like showering. I'm like, man, I'm so focused on just like calming my nerves. And I'm like, what do you actually want to do this morning? And he just was like the word about the worship and thinking about that and just freedom and worship this morning, that all came like after I like released that, like, it's not about me, but it's about what you want to do. And yeah, that was just like a really, I'm just remembering to like release the fears to him, even the little ones that seem kind of silly. Yeah. So I encourage you guys to share what kind of came to mind in that time with somebody. So it's like there's accountability in speaking things out and encouragement. Yeah. So I'm going to jump into announcements so we can go to break. We're going to take the offering tomorrow morning. So just be thinking about that, asking God what the offering to cover for the speakers that have come to be here for the DNA, who have taken time and energy, lots of energy, and even gotten sick. Yeah, to just help bless them the best that we can. I just lost the announcements. Okay. We have an evening session tonight at 6:30 here. And then at lunchtime, we want to go over, we mentioned the airport rides yesterday. So if you're driving to Portland Airport or driving through Portland, make sure you write down your name, when you're leaving, what time you're leaving, and how many seats you have available. So we can try to get everyone there efficiently and in groups as much as we can.
Laura, can they sign up during break?
Yes.
So that we can coordinate it at lunch.
Yes. So sign up during break so we can coordinate at lunch. That's a good idea. The other thing is some of you haven't paid for the DNA conference yet. So where's Win? Win is back there, tan hat. He will help you get that worked out at the break. Yes, that is all. We will have an awesome break. We'll come back in at 10:50. Be back in here, ready to go.